Welcome back to the deep dive. I really hope you are somewhere comfortable right now.
Yeah, hopefully settled in.
Exactly. Maybe you have the lights dimmed a little low in the living room, or you are curled up in that specific chair. You know the one, right? The one that is just a little bit better than all the others.
Oh, absolutely. The good chair.
Right. Or maybe you are driving late at night and the road is just this endless stretch of nothing in front of your headlights, and the radio is the only thing keeping you company.
Which is honestly the perfect setting for this one.
It really is. Because today, we are going to mess with your head a little bit. In the best possible way, of course.
Definitely in a good way.
We are getting into some chilling vibes, a bit of mystery, and honestly some ideas that might just completely change how you look at the clock on your wall.
It is definitely, a sit back and let it wash over you kind of session today. We aren't doing a lecture here.
No, not at all.
This isn't a classroom. There's no quiz at the end of this, though. I mean, there might be a bit of an existential crisis.
Just a minor one.
Right. Think of this as a late-night conversation between friends, trying to unpack the mysteries of the universe while sitting around a fire watching the embers pop.
Exactly. We are unpacking the nature of reality, but with a side of humor, because let's be real, if you cannot laugh at the fact that time might just be an illusion and your past is imaginary.
You are taking life way too seriously.
Way too seriously. We are going to get weird today, but we are going to keep it grounded.
Agreed, it does require a certain flexibility of mind. But before we slip into the stream of consciousness here, we have to handle a housekeeping.
Oh, right. The mandatory disclaimer.
Yes. For everyone listening, we need to state that this podcast will be distributed free of charge on all major platforms for educational purposes. We are here to explore, to learn, and to share.
So pull up a chair. Today, we are cracking open a very specific moment in time. We are looking at session 221 of the early sessions, book 5 of the Seth Material.
Such a fascinating period in the material. This is where the rubber really meets the road, I think, in terms of the metaphysics meeting the mundane.
Yeah, to set the scene properly, let's look at the date of record. It is January 10th, 1966. It is a Monday night, 9 p.m.
Just picture that for a second.
Right, it is the mid-60s. No smartphones, no internet, no endless scrolling, no Netflix. Just a husband and wife, Robert Butts and Jane Roberts, in their living room in Elmira, New York.
And Jane, or Rupert as Seth calls her.
Right, Rupert.
She is going into a trance to channel this personality essence known as Seth.
And the atmosphere in the room is super important, too.
It is. The notes actually mention that Jane was feeling a bit sleepy before they started. She begins the session sitting down, eyes closed.
Very casual.
Very intimate. It's quiet. And then suddenly, the voice changes, the posture changes, and Seth begins to speak. It is not theatrical at all.
It is deeply personal.
Exactly. It is happening in a living room, not some grand temple.
And what he talks about in this session is, man, it is a mix of high-level, mind-bending philosophy.
Oh, heavily philosophical.
Stuff that sounds like quantum physics before quantum physics was even cool. And then, strangely enough, very practical, almost mundane advice about conducting ESP tests in your living room.
It is that juxtaposition that makes the Seth Material so unique. You have the secrets of the universe on one hand, and then advice on how to relax before work on the other.
Which we all need.
Right. It grounds the mystical and the practical.
Yeah.
It tells you that the magic is just part of the furniture of reality.
So here is the hook for today, the thing I want everyone to just keep in the back of their minds as we dive in. What if I told you that time isn't a straight line?
That is a big one.
What if the past isn't done? What if you can actually change your past?
And on a totally different note.
Yeah, what if being psychic isn't a gift you are born with, but just a muscle you have to hit the gym to build?
That is the core of session 221. It completely challenges our fundamental assumption that reality is fixed. It asks us to look at the now very, very differently.
Let's start with the heavy hitter first. Segment 1, the inverted time system. When I first read this part of the session, I had to put the paper down and just stare at the wall for a solid minute. It is dense.
Very dense.
It is like trying to read a map that just keeps folding in on itself.
It is a lot to take in. Seth starts by critiquing our normal view of time. We humans, we just love our straight lines.
We do.
Past is behind us, future is ahead of us, and we are just walking along the tightrope of the present. We think of it as a railway track.
Yep.
You can only go one way.
The train does not go back.
Right.
Monday turns into Tuesday. 1965 turns into 1966. Linear progression, cause and effect. If I drop a glass, it breaks. I cannot undrop it. That is how we live.
But Seth basically says, nope, He says that entire view is basically an illusion.
He introduces this concept of an inverted time system.
Yes. He says, and I really want to get this quote right because it is so precise, he says, "The steady line of time does not exist. Time does indeed turn in upon itself, even as it explodes outward from itself."
Explodes outward while turning inward. That sounds like a total paradox. It sounds like something you would hear from a theoretical physicist describing a black hole, or maybe a really confused architect.
It does sound like that, but think about the physics concept of the expanding universe. We usually think of galaxies flying apart from each other, space itself getting bigger.
Right.
Seth says that the theory of the expanding universe actually applies much more to time than it does to the physical universe.
Wait, so time itself is expanding? It is getting
Yeah,
bigger?
expanding and compressing simultaneously. That is the inverted part. He says it is an inversion in terms of value, interwound upon value, energy compressed, contained, working upon itself, contained, but with momentum.
Okay, let's unpack momentum for a second. Usually when we think of momentum like a car rolling down a hill, it is going one way, forward.
Right, linear.
If I throw a ball, the momentum carries it away from me. But Seth completely throws a wrench in that idea.
He says the momentum works both ways. If time speeds ahead, it must also speed backwards.
That is the line that really got me. If time speeds ahead, then you must say also that it speeds backwards. So it is not an arrow shot from a bow. It is, I don't know what, a ripple? A heartbeat?
Imagine an explosion. That is the metaphor he uses. Energy moves in all directions from the core. It does not just go forward, it goes out in a sphere.
Okay, a sphere.
Seth says this energy moves in all directions from its core, and the core at times becomes its outer surface.
Whoa, the core becomes the surface. That is some serious Mobius strip geometry right there.
It really is.
It is like the inside is the outside. It reminds me of those donuts. What are they called? Toruses, where the energy just flows in and out of itself constantly.
Exactly. It implies that the beginning and the end are constantly trading places. And this whole dynamic leads to what Seth calls the spacious now.
The spacious now. I absolutely love that term. It sounds like a really comfortable living room.
It does.
It sounds inviting, like a place where you just don't have to rush.
In a way, it is. It is a state of existence where the present, past, and future are all available simultaneously.
All at once.
Yes. Because the steady line of time does not exist, you have this inverted system where momentum is recognized and utilized by individual consciousness.
So if I am living in the spacious role, now I am not just stuck in this exact second. I have access to the other parts.
Exactly.
I am not trapped on the tightrope. I can step off and look at the whole circus.
You can see the whole tent. And this is where it gets really trippy. Seth mentions a contact they made with an inhabitant of another system.
Oh, right, the entity.
Yeah. This entity could perceive Jane and Rob's existence in both the future and the past simultaneously.
Like looking at a comic book page. You can see the first panel and the last panel at the exact same time. You can see the hero punching the villain, and you can see the hero eating breakfast 3 pages earlier without flipping the page.
Yes, perfect analogy.
Right.
To that entity, our present is basically a form of imprisonment. We are locked in this tiny sliver of view. We have horse blinders on.
Just seeing what is right in front of us.
Right. But this entity, he realized how an incident would end while it was still happening. He could relive it at his leisure. He could remember it from a viewpoint in his future.
That is an incredible amount of power. But here is the kicker for me. Seth says this entity can give this information about this event to his own image as it existed in time before the contact was made.
Meaning he can send a message back to his past self.
Which completely changes the past. If I tell my past self, hey, do not eat that gas station sushi, and I don't eat it.
The past is different.
The past is different.
Correct. Seth is very explicit here. He says, in essence, you see the past can be changed. Present actions can change future events that would otherwise occur.
Right, we get that part.
But then he says, when this is admitted, then we must admit also that present events can alter the past.
Okay, hold on. This is the classic time travel paradox, but Seth isn't talking about building a DeLorean here.
No machines.
He isn't talking about physically transporting your biological body to 1955.
Yeah?
He is talking about consciousness. He says there is no element in the past that has a different structure that is not present in the future.
He is saying they're made of the exact same stuff. Because they're made of the same stuff, which is perception and energy, they're both completely malleable.
That makes sense.
We accept easily that if I study hard today, present action, I will get a degree next year, future change. Seth argues that if we change our resonance or perception today, we alter the past just as effectively.
He gives this incredible example to explain it. The house.
Yes, the house where Rupert Jane spent her childhood.
So let's ground this for a second. We all had that house, right? The place we grew up. In our heads, it is fixed.
Very solid.
It had white siding, a creaky front porch, a very specific smell in the hallway. Maybe the carpet was shag green. It is a historical fact. I could probably show you a photo of it. But Seth says, not really.
He says that was never one definite, unchanging object.
I love his description here. He says the house was a conglomeration of atoms and molecules.
Right. It is only perceived as a house because we all agree to see it that way. He says it was perceived specifically by everyone who saw it as a slightly different house.
So my childhood home, the version my mom saw, the version the mailman saw, the version I saw, they were all literally different realities.
They were different constructions. Seth says, for each observer, quite literally created from his own subconscious energy an approximation of a house.
Literally created, not just interpreted or remembered differently, created. That is a massive distinction.
It changes everything.
It means the physical world isn't just out there waiting for us to look at it. We are building it as we look at it.
That is the key word. We aren't just cameras taking a passive picture of a static world. We are projectors.
Projectors, right.
We are projecting the house. So Seth says, take the year 1943. We look back at 1943 as a fixed chapter in a history book.
Yeah.
Seth calls it an artificial collection of events loosely agreed upon.
Loosely agreed upon. That makes history sound like a Wikipedia article that anyone can just go in and edit. Or like a group chat where we are all just deciding what happened at the party last night.
In a way, it is. If the house in 1943 only existed because of the energy projecting it then, and if time turns in on itself, then the energy we hold right now can interact with that artificial collection of events.
This breaks my brain a little bit, because it implies that 1943 isn't gone. It is just over there, or maybe in here.
It is only the perception that is limited, Seth says. The past exists to the exact same extent the present exists. We just have those blinders on that force us to look at one moment at a time. The year 1943 is still vibrant. It is still happening. It is still reacting.
So theoretically, if I am understanding this right, if I have a really awkward memory from high school.
We all do.
You know the one. Everyone listening has one right now.
Yeah.
The time you tripped on stage during graduation, or you said you too when the waiter said enjoy your meal.
Oh, the classic.
Or you asked someone to dance and they just laughed at you.
The memories that make you physically cringe at 3 a.m.
Exactly those. Can I go back and fix it? Can I use this inverted time to make me not trip over my own feet at prom? Can I rewrite the physical script?
Well, Seth doesn't explicitly promise you can unspill the punch bowl in a way that the stain magically disappears from the physical photograph in your album.
Right.
But the implication is that you can change the energy of that event. If you change your perception of it now, in the spacious now, you alter the resonance of the event itself.
The resonance.
Yes. You might not change the physical tripping, but you might change the you that experienced it, or the outcome, or the trauma attached to it. You are rewriting the code of your own history.
That is actually incredibly empowering. It means we aren't victims of our past. We aren't chained to it like a ball and chain. We are constantly co-creating it.
Exactly. Time inversion would merely permit the recreation of a particular perception. You are the artist, and the past is just a canvas you have already painted on, but the paint never truly dries.
The paint never dries.
You can add a new stroke today that changes the composition of yesterday.
I really like that. The paint never dries. Okay, so we have this fluid time. We have this house that is just a cloud of atoms we are holding together with our minds. But then Seth shifts the gears. He talks about who is doing the looking. Because if reality is just a projection, the projector really matters.
He moves into psychological frameworks here. This is where the deep philosophy becomes applied psychology.
He calls them stabilizing platforms.
Which is a very useful term. Imagine if you really did experience all of time at once, the spacious now, without any filter whatsoever.
Just raw data.
If you saw every version of your house, every moment of your life, all at once.
You would go crazy. It would be total chaos, complete sensory overload. It would be like staring directly into the sun.
Right. So we build these psychological frameworks. They are structures that allow energy, meaning us, to view itself. They are equipped to focus in particular directions, like wearing those horse blinders, but for your own sanity.
To keep us sane.
They stabilize us in linear time so we can actually function and pour a cup of coffee without perceiving the coffee in 1992.
But the problem with a framework is that it fundamentally limits you. It is safe, but it is small. It is like living in a studio apartment when you actually own a massive mansion.
Seth points out a real paradox here. He says it is extremely difficult for a psychological structure to view itself.
Because you are inside it. It is like trying to see your own face without a mirror. You literally cannot do it. You are the thing doing the looking.
Or trying to lift a box while you are standing inside the box. It is physically impossible. Seth says in order to do so, it must lift itself from the limitations and abilities of its own nature.
But he says Jane and Rob, and by extension anyone doing this kind of introspective work, are starting to do exactly that. They're breaking the role. He talks about the emerging self.
This is a crucial concept. We aren't just static beings. We are evolving. Seth says they are developing a new identity, a more complicated psychological structure that is capable of perceiving larger areas of reality.
He describes this emerging self as something that observes the ordinary self.
Yes, it is like having a second operating system running in the background, or a supervisor. This emerging self operates on a slightly different time system. It has a slightly different viewpoint of reality.
And this is the really cool part. It has greater control over the physical image and personal future. It is not just sitting back watching the show. It has leverage.
It is the part of you that isn't caught up in the drama of the specific moment. It is the observer, the witness. While your ordinary self is panicking about being 5 minutes late for work, the emerging self sees the whole timeline and knows it really does not matter.
I love the analogy Seth uses here. He talks about imprisonment again. He says, I do not speak in terms of compulsory confinement. Your perceptions simply kept you where you were.
We build our own prisons with our beliefs. The door isn't locked from the outside. We just think it is.
And then he says this line, you could not scale the walls, so to speak. You had to grow taller.
That is easily one of my favorite quotes in this entire session. You had to grow taller.
It is so visual. You are standing in front of this huge brick wall of reality. You are trying to jump over it. You are trying to climb it, maybe smash through it with a sledgehammer. You are exhausting yourself trying to escape the box. And Seth says, no, just grow.
If you grow taller, the wall isn't an obstacle anymore. It is just a curb. You literally just step over it. You do not destroy the wall. You transcend it.
It reminds me of video games. You know when you are playing a game and you are stuck in a maze looking at the walls trying to find the exit?
Oh, yeah?
And then you unlock a feature where the camera suddenly zooms out and suddenly you see the whole map from above.
That is a perfect analogy. The emerging self is that zoomed out camera view. You haven't physically left the maze, but you are no longer trapped by the perspective of being inside the maze. You can see the pattern.
And you realize the maze was just small and entirely solvable.
Precisely. And this growth, this growing taller, is what allowed you to start stepping out of the rigid linear time system and into that spacious state.
Yeah.
And we talked about earlier, you become too big for linear time.
So we have the deep philosophy, we have the growing taller concept. But what I really love about Seth and Jane and Rob is that they didn't just sit around smoking pipes and talking about this stuff theoretically. They tested it.
They absolutely did.
They were doing the work. They were trying to force this emerging self to wake up and do something.
They were conducting experiments, constant, rigorous experiments.
So let's transition to segment 3, practical magic. Or, well, the experiments. Because this is where the rubber meets the road.
The session shifts tone here almost completely. It goes from the nature of the universe and exploding time to, well, Dr. Instream.
Dr. Instream. I always picture him as this very serious researcher in a tweed jacket, desperately wanting to prove ESP is real, but completely terrified of looking foolish to his colleagues.
And this session gives us a really fascinating look into the protocols they were using. Jane and Ra were working with Dr. Instream to provide data on objects. They were trying to do psychometry.
He was reading the history of an object just by touching it.
Right, picking up the energetic residue.
But before they even get to the test itself, Seth gives Jane some life advice. And honestly, it is advice I think I need to print out and tape to my computer monitor.
The advice on relaxation.
Yes. Seth says, it is best if he, referring to Rupert or Jane, not work at his own writing or records up until the last moment or so before a session. He should relax in any way he chooses the hour preceding a session.
It seems so obvious, but how often do we actually do that in our lives?
Never.
We rush from one task to another. We treat our brains like machines that can just switch gears instantly. Seth is emphasizing that to access these emerging self-abilities, these psychic skills, you need a buffer zone. You need to consciously downshift.
You cannot go from responding to highly stressful emails straight into channeling the wisdom of the ages. You need that hour. You need to clear the cache.
So having established the absolute need for relaxation, they dive into the test for Dr. Instream.
The setup is Dr. Instream wants data on a single object. He hasn't told them what it is. It is a completely blind test.
Seth gives a tip here too before he even starts guessing. He says, an object will work best if it has emotional significance.
Why is that? Why does emotion matter so much to a psychic reading? Why not just use a random rock found on the street?
Because emotion is energy. Seth often describes thoughts and objects as having electromagnetic reality. An object that someone loves or hates or fears, it glows brighter, metaphorically speaking, in the psychic spectrum than a random paperclip on a desk. It has a charge.
It is like the difference between looking at a light bulb that is turned off and one that is turned on. The emotional charge lights it up in the Spacious Now.
Exactly. So Seth tunes in. He is trying to pick up Dr. Instream's object.
And he says something round, in the nature of a pincushion. Red in color, perhaps with green. Round with an apple shape belonging to his wife.
Very specific details. He is not being vague like a carnival fortune teller. He is seeing a specific form.
And then he shifts to talking about Dr. Instream himself and the ESP card tests he's been running. And this is where we get a masterclass in the psychology of failure. This part really, really resonated with me.
Oh, this is profound.
Mm-hmm.
Dr. Instream was apparently struggling to repeat a successful experiment with ESP cards, one that had odds of 1,000,000 to 1.
Which is huge. If you hit 1,000,000 to 1 odds, you want to do it again to prove it wasn't just a massive fluke. You want to publish that paper. You want to call the Nobel Committee.
Right. But Seth says Dr. Instream is actually blocking himself. He says he wants a repeat, but he fears he will not get it simply because he wants it so badly.
The classic holding the sand too tight problem. The harder you squeeze, the more just slips out through your fingers.
Seth calls it a subconscious inhibiting factor. The student, the subject who is actually doing the guessing, reacts to Dr. Instream's unexpressed anxiety.
So Dr. Instream is standing there, holding his clipboard, thinking, please work, do not fail, do not fail. And that energy just poisons the well.
It creates a self-fulfilling prophecy. Seth points out he believes and expects success in his hypnosis experiments, and that is why he attains success there. But with the cards, the fear takes over.
It really highlights that expectation isn't just a mood you're in. It is a force. It is an active variable in the experiment. If you desperately fear failure, you are basically manufacturing failure.
Which is a chilling vibe in itself. If you think about how often we all walk around fearing things, we are constantly broadcasting do not fail signals, which the universe basically hears as focus on failure.
Right. It makes you want to seriously check your own fear setting before you walk into a meeting or go on a date. Are you broadcasting desperation or are you broadcasting confidence?
Seth even picks up precise details about the student involved in the card test. Brown hair, initial E number 6. He is showing off a little bit here, validating that he can see the situation clearly, even if the physical results of the test are being blocked by fear.
We shall, however, achieve what we want, Seth says. He is very confident.
He always is. He sees the emerging self of the situation, not just the fearful limitations of the ordinary self.
Now, speaking of achieving what we want, or not achieving it, we have to talk about the envelope test. This is segment 4, learning from mistakes, because this is where the skeptical listener might say, okay, but did they actually get it right?
This is a great part of the session because it shows that even Seth, or at least the channel coming through Jane, isn't 100% perfect all the time, and there is a really fascinating reason for it. It reveals the underlying mechanics of how this works.
So here's the setup. Rob hands Jane a double-sealed envelope. It is the 26th test. Jane puts it to her forehead. She does not open it. She just holds it there, waiting for a signal to come through.
And she starts getting impressions.
She says, something to do with money. Money order. Blue. A schedule of events. 2 males, 1 female.
And Rob, in his notes, points out that these are personal associations.
Yeah. Jane's own brain is getting in the way. She is thinking about money orders and schedules because they had literally been dealing with that mundane stuff in their daily lives. It is just mental clutter.
This is the static on the radio line. She is trying to tune into a distant station, but the local station, her own daily worries, is overpowering the signal.
But then she gets something else. Amidst all that noise, a clear signal cuts through. She says Rupert's white coat and last Saturday evening.
Now, to the listener, that just sounds like another personal association. My coat. It sounds like she's just thinking about her wardrobe.
Exactly. Rem probably thought, okay, she is just thinking about her winter clothes now. This test is a total bust, but let's reveal what was actually inside the double-sealed envelope.
The object was a drawing, a humorous drawing of a pigeon,
A pigeon?
but not just any pigeon, a pigeon shivering in the snow.
Shivering in the snow. Okay, connect the dots for us here. How does white coat equal shivering pigeon?
On the previous Saturday evening, the exact one Seth mentioned, it was bitter cold outside, and Jane had worn that specific white coat to go out in the cold.
So the feeling of the object in the envelope was cold. Shivering. Winter.
Exactly. The drawing radiated cold and shivering. Jane's psychic senses picked up that signal accurately. She felt the cold. But her conscious mind, which acts as the translator, had to put physical words to it. So it just grabbed the closest strong memory of cold and shivering available in her mental database, which was her white coat from Saturday night.
That is fascinating. So it wasn't a miss. It was a misinterpreted hit.
Seth explains this perfectly. He says, the coat was a legitimate connection, but I could not get through to him to make it correctly. He was working on the level of personal associations.
It is exactly like playing charades. The universe is acting out shivering pigeon, and Jane just yells out my white coat.
Yes, that is it. And she is technically right about the vibe, but completely wrong about the noun.
And Seth doesn't scold her for it. He actually frames this as a totally necessary part of the process. He does not say you failed. He says you are learning.
He says, only by making mistakes can Rupert learn to distinguish the highly nebulous changes that characterize legitimate hits from failures.
You have to throw a gutter ball to know what a strike feels like. You have to feel the difference between my brain making stuff up and actual data coming in.
Seth says there is a certain feel to the correct channel. It is a texture, a frequency. And you cannot just explain it in a book. You have to feel it yourself. You have to feel the difference between I'm thinking about my busy schedule and I am actively receiving data.
This brings us right back to that idea of the psychic gym. Seth says explicitly, contrary to popular thought, while everyone has so-called psychic abilities, they must be trained in specific areas of accomplishment.
Everyone, not just special people, not just people born with crystal balls, everyone. But it requires training. It requires relaxation. It requires practice. And it requires the humility to be wrong, like Jane was with the coat, so you can actually learn how to be right.
It is so grounding. We started this deep dive talking about expanding time and exploding universes, and we end up with practice makes perfect. It is very human.
But that connects perfectly back to the emerging self. How do you build that new self? How do you grow taller? By practicing, by testing, by making mistakes and learning to distinguish the true signal from the noise. That is how you scale the wall.
And by realizing that the noise, the personal associations, the fear of failure, like Dr. Instream had, that is just the wall we are trying to grow over.
Precisely. The wall is made entirely of our own clutter.
Man. Okay. Let's recap what we have unpacked today, because it is a lot, and I do not want anyone's head to explode, at least not without a Spacious Now to catch all the pieces.
Fair enough. We covered the inverted time system, the idea that time turns in on itself and explodes outward, creating a spacious now where past, present, and future all coexist.
We talked about how the past isn't fixed. It is a conglomeration of atoms held together by perception. You can change the painting. The house is just a projection.
We discussed the emerging self, that observer part of us that is growing taller to see over the walls of our limited linear reality. The zoomed-out camera.
And we learn that psychic ability is just a skill. It needs relaxation, it needs emotional connection, and it needs the courage to make mistakes so you can learn the precise feel of the truth.
A very comprehensive dive into a single hour of Jane and Rob's life in 1966.
It really is. And you know, I have a final thought I want to leave everyone listening with. A little homework assignment for the drive home or the shower tomorrow morning. Something to just chew on.
Let's hear it.
We talked about how the past is malleable, how we are constantly recreating it. So I want to ask you, what event in your own history are you currently recreating just by how you choose to view it today?
That is a very powerful question. Are you viewing a past failure as a permanent tragedy? Or as the moment you learn to distinguish the signal, just like Jane with the envelope?
Because if you change the way you view it, you might just change the event itself. You might change the resonance. And that, my friends, is exactly how you grow taller.
Indeed. We are the architects of our own timelines.
Now, we owe a huge thank you to the source of all this mind-bending wisdom. This deep dive was based on the incredible Seth Material.
Specifically, the Early Sessions Book 5.
We want to give full credit to the publisher, the New Awareness Network. They are the ones keeping these archives alive, scanning these old notes, and making sure this incredible wisdom does not disappear.
If this conversation sparked something in you, and I highly suspect it did, do not stop here. Go directly to the source. Read the books. Hearing us talk about it is one thing, but reading Seth's actual words is a different frequency entirely.
Seriously,
Yeah.
we are barely scratching the surface here. Go to sethcenter.com/the-early-sessions. I will just say it normally. sethcenter.com/early sessions. Buy the books, support the work. There is so much more in there than we could ever cover in an hour.
It is a literal library of consciousness waiting for you.
So until next time, keep relaxing, keep practicing, and try to see if you can zoom out that camera just a little bit more.
Grow taller.
Grow taller. Good night, everyone.
Again, it.